Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I am Mike. I am here with Evan and Brian. How you guys doing?
Hi.
Doing good. Welcome, Brian.
We got a lot of snow. We got a lot of snow.
We got a lot of snow too. I don't know about how much is a lot of snow for you?
We got 10 inches where in my house, which is pretty big.
Yeah,
pretty big for Indy.
Yeah.
Nice.
DC doesn't get snow very often either, so I haven't really left the house in the last week.
We got rain. Same as every other month.
It's just the flavor of precipitation, right?
Yeah, except you get two flavors and I get one, so I'm a little bit jealous.
Sometimes you get mist though, Evan.
Yeah, it's true. That is the evasive third flavor, and really exciting when we get that. But yeah, it's usually just rain. Brian, welcome, first of all. Brian comes to us from the Indianapolis area. He has sometimes been a guest on the Indie Garrison podcast. And Brian, I brought you on for a couple of reasons. We're going to get into those reasons later. But
dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we call... Yeah, that's what we call a little bit of a teaser, so that you're going to keep listening to the podcast or watching the video. Hello, everybody. But I don't know, is there anything you wanted to say about yourself before we define you?
Oh man.
Yeah, I didn't warn you about this.
No, so I mean, about me personally, like things I enjoy.
Yeah, hey, any fact that you want.
It's your definition.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. All right, I got married, 4 kids. My kids take up most of my time. The small amount of spare time that I have, I'd like to play Legion because it's my only thing. Sometimes I do play Dota 2. I'm a long-term Dota 2 player. But
who is your Dota 2 guy or girl?
I believe it's called Champion.
No, Hero.
In case it's not clear.
Hero. Sorry. Okay.
Champions is that League of Legends is trash.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, so I'm always play support. So Witch Doctor, I like Pudge support. I like Crystal Maiden. I like any sort of support. It's my jam.
How many hats?
I play all the time.
How many hats do you have?
Oh,
I understand that Dota 2 is a hat collection game, and that the actual putting people in lane stuff is just a means for hat collection. That's basically what I know.
Okay. I don't bother with hats.
Oh wow,
he's not about.
I must have heard wrong. Yeah, not about the hats. I'm about the game, bro.
Some people. I mean, so that's part. So I grew up. I wrestled all my life, and I did MMA for 6 years after high school, and loved it. And so I love competitions, like my jam. And one of my friends invited me over and showed me Legion, and I was like an avid HeroScape player, which is like old school. And then I saw Legion, and I got the mechanics down, and I was like, this game's awesome. This is so much better than chess, which is what I do in my spare time.
Wow, you literally went from chess to Legion. It's funny because it's such like a thing that us gaming content creators is that you just like talk about chess and use that as like a comparison point to all other games, as if like nothing between Legion and chess has ever existed. So it usually sounds kind of silly, but you are the use case, is that you went straight from chess to Legion.
Well, yeah, I mean, I still like late at night. You still play chess. I'm still terrible at it, but I love it.
Yo, what's your rating?
1400.
Oh, you're much better than me. I'm like hard stuck at like 1,000 because I'm bad. I play like 2 games a night before I go to bed, and it's just, it's I win one and I lose one, therefore I never move.
Yeah. That happens. Yeah. But yeah, I love the game. HeroScape. was a much more randomized game, lot more swingy. But there's some good, decent strategy component to it, and Legion is just like right up my alley of a little bit of that RNG flavor, but enough strategy that you can overcome all the RNG if you play correctly, in my opinion. So
Yeah, you probably would have liked Armada, rest in peace. But that,
everyone keeps telling me that.
yeah,
It was a
that
very
was
good
even
game.
more. It was even less about like chance than Legion is. Like in Armada, sometimes you could deploy all your ships and then look at your opponent's ships and then just go like, "Oh, I think I've already lost the game." That was usually me that was saying that, by the way. But yeah, very very strategic, but great game. And I'm hopeful that the promise of one last little wave of content will make the Armada players happy. Okay, but I do have a little bit of housekeeping stuff to get into real quick first. Talk amongst yourselves while I do this, please. So I do want to let everybody know that we have reworked all the Patreon tiers in the Fifth Trooper. Things are quite different than they were before, and that there are many reasons for that. I'm going to be getting into those in a post that is going to go up later this week. And then a video, the first video that I make and export on my own. So that'll probably be disaster a little bit after that.
Well, you can call me if you need me.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, it's like there are experts around, and like that ties into the fact that I am going forward going to be taking over sort of the central management role at the Fifth Trooper. Jay is still around for those of you who have been talking in the YouTube comments asking if Jay still has a pulse. He does. I talked to him just the other day. He is with us, and he does have some plans in terms of like some new ways to contribute and get involved. But basically, because uh, some situations have shifted around a little bit, is that I volunteered to start taking things over. And I do want to say that the evidence that Jay is still around is that the website is still up, because as soon as I got admin privileges, I broke the entire website within 5 days of getting those privileges. And then Jay had to fix everything. So it'll be a work in progress. I appreciate everybody's patience. The cast and the video are going to be changing a little bit too, but we're going to need a few weeks to get that in order. So I think like by February we should be good to go as far as everything that goes with that. One thing I am ready to start doing is that we're going to be shouting out a random member of our patrons once per episode of podcasting that we do, this and whatever other podcast we may have in the future. So this week, randomly selected is Grant Saunier. Thank you very much for being a member. All right, boring stuff over. Thank you for listening. We had a little bit of news to get into before we get into our main topic. Did any of you guys notice that there was an update to the upgrade card section of the PDF of the new cards? Did you guys see that?
I mean, I think it was sometime last week, right? And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was, doom scrolling on Instagram or whatever,
yeah. As you
and
do.
I came across the post from AMG. It was like, click for the 2025 updated like Legion player cards, and I was like, whoa, they updated a bunch of stuff. I opened it and I started scrolling, and I'm like, what is
And you
different?
kept
I couldn't
scrolling.
figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. I went through like 20 pages and I was like, nothing is different. And to the point where I closed the document and started asking people, what's the difference? I don't see it. Because obviously I didn't scroll far enough. But yeah, I guess they added three programming cards that I think kind of already existed.
They they did, but so there's a key reason for this, and it made the interaction on the AMG Facebook a little bit extra funny to me, is that it turned into sort of like a who's on first situation, because there were people like you who scrolled through the whole thing. They got to the bottom and they were like, I don't see anything that's different. But what had been added to the bottom was there were the three different types of protocols: the defense, engagement, and attack. And that like they basically they took the same game text that they had before and then they put it onto the new template with the bigger card, and then they added those to the PDF. So they're, as far as I know, like the first like upgrade cards that they put in the PDF that haven't actually changed. And so
Well, they don't
on
have images anymore, I guess.
yes. So yeah, maybe you could call it a downgrade if you want to be like a little bit sarcastic about it. But
Sure.
um,
Did they change points at all?
oh no, all the
Okay.
same. And on the Facebook page is that the who's on first situation was, it was like somebody was saying what changed about the cards, and then AMG replied, we added the cards to the PDF. And then somebody else said, but what changed about the cards? And then AMG replied, what changed is that we added the cards to the PDF. And so people were sort of going crazy. And like I was trying to just figure out what was going on. And then I realized that the reason they did that is because them crab droids are gonna have the two weapon hard points like that are new for the crab droid, but that box is not actually going to come with the three protocol cards, and so they had to put it on a PDF because when crabs come out, uh, you needed to have a print and play option for people who are new Legion players who haven't like had a spider or snail droid in their collection in the past, that they don't have the protocols. So I thought it was a little bit funny, but you know, the fact that there was like sort of a social media announcement about the update, it's not like AMG was doing anything wrong by doing that, but the fact that like it's all because of the fact that they're not in the actual box, is the only reason they needed to do that at all. So there you go. New cars.
Yeah, their advertising on the update, I think also could have maybe been a little bit better messaging.
Yeah. I mean,
whatever, right?
we figured it out at the end of the day. It
Yeah,
is a completely innocent, silly thing, which I'm never not going to point out because that's my job. That's what
That's what you do.
that's what
Uh,
we do.
so the real piece of news is that this Sunday, that would be January 12th. Wait, is that Sunday?
Yes.
Yes, that's
Sunday
at noon Central Standard Time. We don't have the time in this podcast to get into the discussion we had about Brian's home state's time zone situation. So I'm sorry that you'll have to wait for the After Dark version for that one. But
I still don't really understand it for whatever.
None of us do. None of us
don't
do,
worry.
Mike.
Yeah,
No one...
nobody else does either. But at noon Central Time, which is the definitive time over in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where Worlds is being held this year, where Adepticon is being held this year, I should say, is that the tickets for all of the events at Adepticon are going to go up. So that does include all the Legion events, including Worlds, and then all of those other side events. I don't think we've talked about it on the cast yet, but I'd say a positive thing is that this year, even for players who aren't doing Worlds, is that there's going to be like standard, like regular old Legion competitive options for everybody on all 4 days. So that's a plus, and people can sign up for those ahead of time. So those will go up, and then also something that people who are new to Adepticon may be curious about is that like the very first bunch of people that like get the Adepticon passes in general is that they have like a gift bag that is, I forget exactly how much
it is.
it
A
is.
gift box, just so
Right,
we're clear. I get it every year.
Yeah, you get so much stuff, and like Mike, what's some of the stuff that you've gotten in the past? And
yeah, because I've heard good things about these boxes, and I've never got one. So
yeah, so I mean, I think the upgrade is, I forget how much it is. It's somewhere between like $80 and $120.
Yeah, it's around there.
Generally, it's enough stuff that I bring an extra suitcase with me when I'm flying.
Oh wow.
And like this is just like, I think I walked away with somewhere between like 1 to 3 Shatterpoint squads, like a Battle Force, like a GW Battle Force box.
Yep.
And like those are like the name brand stuff I would say that's in them. Like AMG has chosen to sponsor these kits pretty hard, so they've put like 3 or 4 things in these, at least in the last couple of years. It's been pretty good. Um, like I think I got a Poggle the Lesser character pack. I got a couple squads of Shatterpoint guys. I got a Battle Force box for GW, and then there was just like 15 to 20 other odds and ends in there, including like core sets for other games.
It's yeah, you get core sets
Wow.
from from like the sort of like the medium tier games that want to sort of advertise themselves. Is that like some of those will just like toss a core set in there.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I would conservatively say that I probably that like gift box probably had somewhere in the realm of like 400 models in it last year. That might
it's
be high.
nuts.
That might be high.
And
Maybe like 250, 300, but it was a lot.
Still, that's a
so
lot.
like if you ever like feel like you already or may be playing games other than Legion like at all, I think it's worth at least thinking about. But yeah, bring some extra packing space for that. Like
The other thing is I'm not super advocating for this, but um a lot of times you can turn around, like if you don't want it, you can turn around and sell it for 3 to 4 times what you paid for it.
yeah, like
Um,
Nice.
there's MCP stuff too. We didn't mention that, but yeah, like AMG like really heavily supports it, and they
yeah, I got an MCP character pack too in it now that I'm thinking
yeah.
about it.
A
Yeah.
couple
Oh,
years ago,
nice.
there's like a Hydra turret, which is a very nice piece of terrain that I think cost $60 at the store.
I still have it. It's still in the
Yeah.
box from
I mean, it's good terrain if you ever play MCP.
it's the big tank, right? The
Yeah. It's like it's not a turret, maybe it's like a tank with like big cannons on it.
It's terrain, but
Yeah.
I think there's like a scenario in the box that you can like
That's right.
play
There
like
is. There's a
around the
scenario in
tank
there.
or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So anyway,
yeah.
it's a nuts value, and only the first like, you know, percentage whatever of people who get tickets, you know, like they're going to be sold out by you know, like an hour uh after they go up, if not before. So if you want to be Johnny on the spot to get that stuff, then go on ahead. I think for the Legion stuff, from everything I hear, is that it's a bigger venue. So I'm like the main thing that I hope for is like I hope lots of people sign up, but I hope that nobody is locked out because of space. But we will have to see what happens.
Yeah, I doubt that will happen. It hasn't been an issue really in previous years since it has been an invite only tournament. And you kind of have had your spot reserved because of that.
Hmm.
Um, so, but I feel like there's going to be enough spots this year where that should hopefully not be an issue. And if it is an issue, that sucks for the people that can't go, but that means this is going to be the biggest Legion event like in the world to date by a lot. So,
Yeah.
that would be good.
Yeah.
Yep. And Brian, you and like a probably pretty sizable group from Indiana will be making the relatively short drive to go there. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of us are wanting to be there. So it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Show up with our Indiana Jank.
Yeah. Well, don't spoil it. We're going to talk about that in
Oh,
just a second.
sorry. Sorry.
First though, we need to like we're all having fun here, but we need to like get a little bit serious because this is a new segment that I was inspired by. There is a live Google Sheets that is being kept up by a member of the Legion Discord, Rowdy Octopus, who is obviously very good with Excel and Google Sheets because I've seen a couple of the other things that he does for Legion, and he's you know, just one of those sheets artists, man, and he is keeping track of the Asmodee stock, as in like is the Asmodee website selling the unit or not, and like tracking when these various units sell out. So like he's doing this live, and you can find it. It may even be pinned on the Legion Discord, but if you search for Google Sheets stock, then you should find it. But I figured that to mark, you know, to mark passing, to be respectful, is that once a week if there are any units that have gone to the great beyond and Asmodee is no longer selling them, and we're going to the zone of needing to go to eBay or like random store shelves to find the units that you want, is that I feel like we should market to, again, just be respectful. So why are you laughing?
It's just fun. It's just fun.
Do you laugh at funerals, Brian? What's going on here?
I'm that kind of guy.
But God, if you were an intern on my team and you started laughing when I was trying to have a serious conversation with a patient, is like, dude, you wouldn't last the month, man. Luckily, this is just a podcast and I don't have that kind of power, but
not yet.
Not yet. So we cue the sad music, Mike. This is when the sad music is gonna come in. We have to imagine it, but I think people on the other end are hearing it right now, and they're getting really sad at this royalty-free music that will not make anybody upset, which was the first mistake that I made in trying to set up the segment. Anyway, here are the units. Tauntauns couldn't make it past the first marker. B1 upgrade pack. The rad cannons have run out of radiation. Sad. Cassian, it's been wiped out by the Death Star. He's hugging Jin, who I think is probably still going to be available on the Asmodee site, because Jin's not really in a great place right now. But Cassian, he's out of here, and so is his friend K2, who is lying smoking on the console on Scarif. And lastly,
too soon.
I'm sorry. Well, we'll see him again in Andor Season 2. It's fine. Lastly, Gar Saxon, a little bit of a surprising one. The 5th Trooper has a special relationship with Gar Saxon. We were responsible for printing out his combat shield when Atomic Mass Games refused to do that themselves, and we came in to do a service and fill that in. But
back when we did the print and place.
That's right. Back when 5th Trooper was a real website. Anyway, Gar Saxon out of here. Maybe we can take credit that we were pumping up Super Commandos, and everybody went and nabbed up those last Gar Saxons. But so those are the units that since our last podcast are out of here. Any thoughts on those, gentlemen? Any last words before we together shovel the dirt on these boxes of the old SKUs?
Do you think that they're gonna include Gar Saxon's shield this time when they reprint them?
Boy, can you imagine?
The next level trolling that they tell just because you said something, Mike.
I mean,
they'll just make sure that the box that gets shipped to you doesn't have it.
Hey.
It could be that, or maybe when they re-release Swoops, they'll have crit to block again, but in like the new font and format. That would be really impressive, because they would have had to really do work to do that.
Yes, absolutely. I think I'm actually not surprised that those units are all selling out, to be honest. Cassian was hot several months ago.
Right.
I think Tauntauns are in a decent spot with 2.6, and the B1 upgrade packs. I mean, you got your rad cannons are fun. they're just fun. Big squads with rad cannons, man. I promise you're punching through a poison.
That you're totally right. And like my little brother, when he was playing more, he absolutely loved to roll up with B1 squads with the rad cannon and the Viper droid, just to get all of those range 2 dice in there with zero modifiers.
Zero modifiers.
But boy,
you know
fun.
what? Every one in 8 rolls, it's really good.
Yeah.
That's right.
The other 7 out of 8 times, it's absolute garbage.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what else is in that B1 upgrade pack, right? Was it the was in
the
it, right?
E5S, which is not nearly as good as it used to be now. Now the cover changed. And then the other two are ones that like I joked about on a blog post that I wrote that it was just like a totally nonsense post about like the the five most outrageous things about Legion 2.6, and it was like that the crabs can't strafe and other extremely serious things like that. But one of them was that there's is that like to me there were still like two miniatures that FFG released and then AMG inherited that to date I have not seen on a game board at all ever, which is the security droid and the OOM, also known as the droid. Now the latter I have heard some rumblings that like people who want to be spreading out their B1 armies have tossed some ooms in there. But a big part of me wonders is that like if you can just print it right now, and then you could probably just put in like any B1 miniature and paint the head yellow, and you got yourself an oom.
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't exactly stand out in a crowd. Like I think they literally look the same as the standard leader. I think that they're not holding binoculars. I don't know. I've never seen one in real life, so I have no idea. And then the security droid has never had a reason to exist to get rid of AI attack. But then like for a second that seemed okay, and then they were like, we're gonna come out with the T series personnel mini, which also gets rid of AI attack and gives you a surge token and gives you a better gun. And everybody was like, okay, bye.
Bye, Felicia.
So yeah, who knows? Like, who knows if they're gonna sort of like have those minis do totally different things? Like, I get they could keep the the same. Lord knows that the way that AI changed is that the idea of adding a mini whose sole purpose is to get rid of AI attack when AI attack basically doesn't happen like ever anyway. It seems pretty silly. So maybe they'll totally change the mini.
Here's a hot
maybe
take.
maybe there'll be a 4-point upgrade instead of a
Yeah. I actually think the personnel upgrades for the most part, for the duration of the game's life, have been a pretty big flop. Now and then. As far as like
What
I
about
don't
medics though?
I think maybe with the exception of medics.
Yeah.
But I think basically everything else in that slot, with a couple notable exceptions.
Yeah.
clone shotguns are great.
Well, that's not a personnel upgrade. That's a heavy.
Isn't he part of the personnel upgrade?
He's part of he's in the personnel
it came in the
pack.
clone upgrade pack.
Oh, okay.
It's not in the
Yeah.
personnel slot.
I got you.
Yeah, I'm talking about just like actual personnel upgrades, like these the and stuff. Like most of them are just not playable for the most part. And it's I feel like it's always kind of been that way, with the exception of medics and when they clearly incorrectly cost personnel upgrades, like the clone commander.
What about the battle days when we would put a specialist in I think you would put it in the 5s unit, or you would put it in something else just to have another aim token for take that clankers when they got rid of turn 0 tokens.
Yeah, I mean,
I used it once, like to cheat with clones for a few months, and then they took that away. And my specialist is probably just like sitting at the bottom of the same bin that I put it in 2022.
I mean, there's still like, there's some. I think stormtroopers with T-21Bs and the specialist is still decent.
Yeah.
I think that what's another personnel upgrade that I think is pretty decent? Captains. I think I've seen a lot of rebels run captains with like their SX rebels. I think that's a decent upgrade.
That was another battle days, was the massive captains with
situational
and situational situational awareness, and
rip that upgrade, by the way.
2 copies of vigilance.
Situational awareness went right in the trash can with
Sure
Legion
did.
2.6.
Yeah, not nearly as good as it used to be. I would agree with that. Yeah,
but so yeah, any other thoughts on The Departed?
I'm interested to know why Brian thinks tauntauns are good.
Oh man, I was gonna go right past this, but Mike couldn't resist.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
trying to be nice.
So I'm curious. So I'd like to hear the reasoning on why they're not good, especially with the current objectives.
They're 100 points, right?
I do think let's be fair. I do think they're overpriced.
Okay. All right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think what they do is good. I don't think what they do for their price is worth the cost.
So I've in my games that I've learned that splitting your army, learning how to split your army appropriately is really important, right?
Yeah.
And you can really get away with some weaker units on wings than you can make them last longer than you anticipate, and especially way longer than Old Legion. And I'm not sure why that is, but it feels like it. Like Rebel ATR.
I think I can answer that a little bit. Is that I think the fact that everything is so spread out, like when you're on the
Yes, I think
wings,
that's
like
part of it.
you're on the fringes, you're actually like you're probably taking way less fire than you normally would.
Way less fire. And so like Rebel ATRTs out on a wing or a Tauntaun out on a wing, it's just going to live way longer than you want them to. And I think speed 3 units just in general are pretty hot commodities because you can be on an objective, and if you activate last, you can mess with your opponent pretty bad and show there's some surprises that can take place there.
I agree that there's a future for them. I think that, yeah, like basically where Mike and I both come from is that, you know, when we get on this podcast, I'm gonna go off on a slight tangent. And if we say unit is bad, I think that there's some folks out there who take a little bit personally, and
they definitely do. They definitely people get really hurt about it.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't do that. We don't do that in Indianapolis.
Oh, we're gonna get to you, Brian. Just sit tight. Is that it is nearly always a matter of what do you get for the points. And so like if Mike and I are saying that like we don't think Tauntauns are in a good place, is that I don't think it's necessarily because like the stuff on the card doesn't work. It's not a Jin Urso situation, right? Like her stuff doesn't work. That's why she's bad, one of the reasons. But like for the Tons is that when you think about the other things that you can get for significantly less than 100 points in terms of like charging units, I mean like arcs especially, but you know, when you think about even the efficiency of, obviously they're much slower, but when it comes to the attack dice, is the efficiency of like charging fleets per point cost is just, it seems like it's way higher than it is for Tons. And you know, the era of them trampling over everybody, laying down a bazillion suppression tokens, like nearly making me, well, they did make me question whether I had gotten into the right game when I first experienced like the old version of Tauntauns.
Yeah.
When Izzy was like, okay, I was learning it from one of our local very strong players I talk about often, Izzy Gambliel, and he was like, okay, so I'm gonna run over all of your army, and then I'm gonna run over all of your army again, and then I'm going to ram them, and I get to fix my dice because I do that, and then after that you can't shoot me.
Yeah.
So I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, those days are long past, and I know that they had like a little bit of a rise back up with Echo Base, but the right now is that it seems like the turn one firepower will come up really often, and the taunts they basically never have anything to like really productively do on turn one except to hope to deploy late and then hope to hide. And so like, but if they get caught out, even if they have the 2 dodges, is that like A, there's a bunch of high velocity weapons out there. Hello, clone commandos. And B, is that there's a lot of high dice weapons out there that they will just like get minced up. And if you kill one Tauntaun, the unit becomes really rough. So like it's sort of like Droidekas, where if Droidekas were still 100 points, then I think that, probably I can speak for Mike and I think
Did they
that we
start at
say
100?
they did. They did start at exactly 100 points. This is
They're
kind of
like 60
incredible.
or something
They're
now.
65
They're
points
at
now.
60.
Yeah.
60. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So if Decas were still 100 points, is that I don't think too many people would be like Decas are awesome. But, we're like Decas are awesome because they're 60 points.
They're so cheap. They're so good.
Yeah.
I also just like to kick in here about like the efficiency and stuff. I think, Brian, I think I agree with you that like once you get them on the table and like I think they can do good things, but like when I compare them to like a dewback with a flamethrower, it's only 80 points. I'm like, this unit doesn't attrition. It's got like built-in dodge tokens and armor, and the ceiling on this rifle, it's just way higher than anything the Tauns can ever do. It's like the Tauns are only ever getting in like 4 hits. Sometimes with a dewback, you catch a like, an 8-man unit of whatever, and you
can get
just
some good spikes.
You just go to town on it with a 70, 80 point, dewback or whatever. So I think if the Tawns were coming in at the dewback's price point, which I think that might be even a little too low for the Tawns, I don't know, because they are much faster. I would be so much more about them. But I am interested to hear like if there are certain tactics that you think the Tawns can be utilized in that like kind of get you over the I paid 15 more points than I should have hump.
Yeah. Part of it is that like everything's capture point right now. And Tauns, to be honest, if you're wanting your Tauns to do a lot of damage, I think you're playing your Tauns wrong. You're just going to be disappointed. They're just that's not what their role is. I think if you want your Tauns to be most effective, you want to go with them as late as possible, round 2, and double move onto a unit that's already on a point. And then they just kind of sit there and they just live longer than you want them to, or than your opponent wants them to, right? And they are totally fine sitting there and just soaking up some melee punches. And if they back off of them, you're like, okay, I'll activate that tauntaun and do something else. And I don't know. I just think I don't think that they're like they're certainly not even near the top of the best rebel support. Right? There's better rebel supports in my opinion, but I think that there's a lot of ways that you can make them very effective. And if someone wants to play tauntauns, I think that they can play if you practice them. You can get them playing very high level. So.
No, I think it's a good shout out to just kind of be talking about kind of making them sticky in melee and like kind of giving up the ranged fight with them, because I think a lot of people are used to like harassing with their tauntauns, and I'm not sure that that's really where that unit is at anymore. It's kind of about getting to a point and staying in melee, so you can't, it's hard to kill a tauntaun unless there's like a lightsaber involved, I feel like, at that point, or an arc unit. But
that's, I mean, definitely there are those charging units you want to stay away from. And if that's the case, then obviously you want to keep them out on a wing and you want to weaken that squad that's going to threaten them. And I think Tons on a wing can still do some harassing. But I think there's play there, but I would agree that they're overpriced and they're probably harder to get good than other rebel support.
Sure.
They're one where I could see maybe a keyword changing in some kind of way that also just like makes them a little bit beefier maybe when they update the cards. But at the end of the day, if they don't change it and they just make it cheaper, then I think they're going to be fine. It does relate to an interesting question that one of our patrons had, is that Canadian Bear, I assume no relation to Brian Bear.
No relation, though. Okay. He isn't. I've talked to him online. He's a really nice guy.
Okay, cool. Is that he was curious about whether we're ever going to get long or short edge deployments back. And I was thinking about how, like, we think Tauntauns don't have much to do on turn 1 now. It's like if we went back to short edge deployments, and if all the POIs were like in the middle, is that they would have to spend like half the game running up there, which is kind of the reason of why I don't think short edge deployments are going to be like a significant thing again, is that I think that AMG has wanted this to be a game where like important engagement is happening really on like a little bit on turn one, but like definitely by the time you're in round two is that like the fight is happening. And if we went back to short edge deployment, then you would be talking about like you're halfway through the game before meaningful stuff happens sometimes. And I don't think we're going to go back to that. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think the like the game dev designer portion of me is like, I don't think that will ever happen, just because I think it would be a horrible way to play this new version of the game. I don't think it's built for that. I don't think there's enough turns in the game for short edge deployments to work.
Yeah.
You know, I think in old Legion, you know, if we played short edge deployments, like the game would, by the time you were shooting, people would be like halfway over. I think the game would basically be over by the time that you could even
I think you're
start
right.
the fight, you know, for a lot of units. I mean, I think Tauntauns might be the exception to that. Like Tauntauns and speeder bikes and stuff might be able to like cross the field of battle fast enough where they might be able to shoot stuff on turn 3 or whatever, right? But the rest of your armies,
then they just die.
then they just die. And then, but the rest of your army is not going to be able to like engage until turns 4, turns 5, and frankly, the amount of games of New Legion that I play right now that make it to turn 4, turn 5 is like pretty low. So, you know, I don't know. I definitely think I just don't think I don't think it's even on their radar. And rightfully so with the new rules, frankly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of I'm really anticipating some pretty significant deployment changes with the further updates that they're planning in April.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for that because I don't know. I just think that there's a lot of design space for that, and I'm looking forward to it.
The width of the table, the fact that it is not a squared table, like as of now, and probably for the rest of this cycle of the game, whatever that is, that's being used to create the possibility of like multiple fights happening rather than being used to make it so that like you're squeezing yourself together and marching towards each other. Like I think that goes against the philosophy of what this new version of the game is.
You know, as I think about this in my head though, is it conceivable that like we got like a short edge deployment? Because all of these are also tied to mission objectives, right? Like deployments are no longer separate. You know, I could see something where like, I don't know, there's short edge deployment zones, but like you get to deep strike with like half your units. Or like half your units gain like old infiltrate type thing.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
That.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would be particularly fun, but like there's stuff like that you could do that I think the putting short deployment zones short zones on the edges to like shorten the what is it? Friendly territory definition, so that you can like open up more of the board for like an effect like that would be potentially interesting.
Like a little bit more like what they have for Breakthrough right now, kind of.
Yeah. I would say Breakthrough is like maybe the closest thing to a short edge deployment, except that like it's not really a short edge deployment because you're only have to get to your, it's like the inside corner or whatever. Which is cool and interesting for sure. It's definitely a different game mode than we've ever had access to. I don't know. I think there's definitely stuff they could do with that, but I think
I'd like to see. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I'd like to see like a kill box thing. Like maybe one team starts on both short edges and the other team starts in the middle. Like,
totally. Yes, I think
that'd be kind of cool. Like just something
cool.
like that would be interesting.
Kind of like like a breakout scenario.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I liked. I liked the idea, I should say, of hostage exchange when I first saw it, because I thought that it was going to be like that, and then like over time you realize that it often just became like a game of hiding eventually. But
so I helped with that objective, and like it's one of those things where like you put together a bunch of this stuff, and you're
yeah,
like, okay, like, and the idea of what exchange became like 2 years
yeah.
after it got released was just like nowhere close to what it was intended to be, right? And
That's the nature of game design, right?
it totally is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know, was it definitely like this thing where force push was going to matter a lot? Absolutely. Was it a thing where like we had envisioned Darth Vader like just like yanking someone's hostage like clear across the board on turn two? No, not really, right? Like
or Maul moving up, going last and force pushing them and choking a guy and making sure that the guy that he force pushed or making sure the hostage token is right next to him, chokes the guy with the hostage, picks it up, and then jumps behind a wall. They could all do that in one action or one turn.
Or Rex more than negating the free move that your opponent got to make before the game even starts.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of stuff like that where like I think we're still in that kind of like kind of what do they call it? Goldilocks land, or I don't know, kind of like a dreamland with like with the new objectives too, where like I suspect there are things going on with the new objectives in the game that like the designers are like, oh, we didn't think about that, right? Um, and that's just a part of how game design works. And I think, I don't know, we're gonna see more and more.
FFG had to change key positions shortly after release, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't around back then, but that was like a thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, blue player key positions used to be blue player just picked to terrain piece.
Yes.
Oh man, that seems really good.
Yeah, it was really good.
There's a guy, Evan, that I went to a tournament where he bid 70 points.
Oh my god. Yeah,
That's
when Legion was a real game, I tell you what.
Well, and it was also back when we only flipped 3 cards, so like you could like be pretty sure you were gonna, hit a KP, like once a tournament or something, as long as you bid pretty well.
Yep. Run Vader with a bunch of snow troopers and a 70-point bid.
Yeah.
Well, I had this has been fun, and I had a segue all lined up, like back when we were talking about radiation cannons, and boy, like a lot's happened since then. But we're gonna try and get ourselves back. We're trying to get ourselves back on topic. All right, so pretend we were talking about the B1 upgrade pack and I was not being sold anymore. And then I would say, speaking of rad cannons, let's talk about your tournament history, Brian, because I think certainly like the current community is that the most recent thing that people would have noticed you for would have been your run at 2024 Worlds, where you ended up at number 9 with a very, very cool. I got to see it a little bit earlier than most people because you and I were at the World Team Championships in Granada, Spain. Had a wonderful time, and I had a wonderful time sort of just like hearing all of your opponents lament about the fact that this wackadoodle list was just smacking them upside the head over and over and over again. You were 6-0 during that run, and obviously got super far in Worlds. But those of us who have been around will also remember that you played 6 rad cannons at Gen Con the year before. Is that right?
Yeah, it was 6 rad cannons, triple BX mines, triple flame spiders, and tack.
That's just gorgeous. I'm like, it's like tearing up. It's incredible list that, and you got to top 8, I think, in that Gen Con with that wonderful list. And then even before that is like the first time that I heard of you was when I was hearing all about this crazy dude who was running a double X34 triple FD cannon at Adepticon the year before that. And when I saw that, I was like, what is going on with this list? And it was when we were gearing up for World Team Championships that Izzy was explaining to me is that he was like reminding me who you were before like I had met you, and that he was like, oh, this was the guy who took triple FD double X34 to the close to the top tables in Adepticon. It's like, oh well, we'll be fine then. Is basically what I said. So you have a legacy of just like really inventive lists. I'm curious, like, did you come up with the core ideas for all three of those, or was there like some help that you got?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I got a lot of help from the indie group guys. Like
Yeah.
the indie Garrison guys do a great job of helping me refine stuff. And we've got an awesome group on the south side of Indy. We got an awesome group on the north side of Indy, and we got we pair really well with the guys down in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky, and they all helped me refine those lists. But they were all mostly my brain children, and I would make tweaks. I'd play with it and be like, wow, there might be something here, and I tweak it some more, and we tweak it some more, and they were all really patient with me in dealing with that disaster after disaster.
I mean, yeah, like those lists are all awesome, and obviously you are extremely capable because you took lists that didn't really have much of a template to build off of in terms of like what the strategy is, and you had to come up with it yourself. Like, I during that era, I was usually just running a bunch of clones, and I would like pile up a bunch of tokens and shoot at people, and that was some would say the opposite of art. But I think that what you did, even if someone
I consider
I know,
myself,
Mike.
I consider
Mike.
myself a very artistic painter. Okay,
Yeah,
paint with all of the colors of the wind.
You're the Pablo Picasso of token sharing, with no doubt.
I only paint in green.
Van Gogh. It's a green season for me.
Yeah.
Is that that you were just coming up with new lists and finding ways to make it work. And I think it's safe to say that back then, when I say back then, I mean 8 months ago, however long it's been now, is that the game was obviously very different, and there were, I think, I'll be curious what your thoughts are. Is that I wrote an article about something along these lines, but I think that there were more opportunities to win games through like clever tactics back then than it feels like there are now. And I read the comments, guys, and part of why I brought Brian on is that, first of all, he's a very cool dude, very, very good at Legion, but also I wanted to shine some light on some of the, just like the idea of forging your own path when it comes to a Legion list and how to run it, and feel free to talk about that. But also, I think that the core question that we were gonna center this discussion on is that in Legion 2.6, what even is Jank anymore, Brian? And is that Jank Dragon, like, can we find it again? Please help us find it.
So I think there's a few things. First of all, I think Legion 2.6 is still really young. And I think just within the several months that we've been playing, or that we've seen some pretty significant changes. Some of them were catalyzed by like actual drastic changes to the clone faction, right? But at the same time, like we've also seen, I've seen within our local community, like gameplay changes, like as people become more and more familiar with running the objectives, that people are getting better and better ideas of what units are going to be better with which situations. And we had years to figure that out with Legacy Legion, right? And if I compare like me as a player in Legacy Legion, how long it took me to get to feel like really confident and to perform really well at tournaments, it took me a while for Legacy Legion. Right. And so if I take that and put that kind of template over top of 260, like it's going to be a little while before some of us figure it out really, really well. But I will say, I don't really know if there's jank right now that because to me everything kind of feels like jank. Like I mean, I come across the table and I'm like, what? I mean, the amount of ATRTs we're seeing in Indianapolis is so high. Like,
Oh, they're good now. They're good.
Yeah, they are.
I
Yeah,
mean,
like
yeah,
you
they're
should be
great,
seeing them everywhere.
I think,
right? And they're
yeah,
great.
I do think to your point, it's tough to like be like, oh, this is jank and totally out of left field when there's like not an established like canon for this is what the solution to the game is like kind of supposed to be. Like
Yeah.
before, when you were breaking out all these lists, I hesitate to use the word solved, but Legion was like pretty solved for the most part. You know, like I would say it was like 85, 90% solved. Um,
I would say people knew what was effective. I wouldn't say solved though.
I guess what I mean by that is like when you rolled up to a table and you played hostage exchange, you looked at the two lists. If you were a good player, you knew exactly how that game was going to go down. Like pretty much like you could like before the game started, a lot of times you could be like, okay, we're playing hostage exchange. I know what command card you're going to play on turn 3, right?
For a gunline list, I totally agree with that.
Um, but now I feel like, okay, we don't really know the objectives as well. The secondaries also throw like a little bit of a curveball into the mix. Plus, nobody is playing like there's not like stock lists in the way that there was before.
There
In that
briefly was, not anymore.
there
I don't think.
sure there
Yeah,
briefly was.
yeah,
But not in a way that like you could be confident you were gonna like roll up to the table and your opponent was playing clones and you're like, oh, I know exactly what they're playing.
right.
Nowadays, it's like you roll up to a table, even when, 501st was a thing, sometimes you'd roll up to a table and somebody was playing clones and it would be completely just off the deep end.
Mhm.
Or at least in a way that we would consider off the deep end before. Is that off the deep end now? I guess is the question we posed to you, Brian.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. It's so interesting because everyone has so many different experiences, right? Like I don't know if I've ever rolled up to a table and thought to myself, I know what this guy's going to play on turn 3. Like I just don't know if I've ever done that because
Oh,
I play so differently than other people that I usually force my opponent to play cards sooner than they want to, or
sure.
and so I'm never been, I don't know, but I can play in a way that I know which command card my opponent should play.
Sure. Yeah. I guess that's kind of what I
Fair.
mean.
Yeah.
But to your credit, generally the lists that you have brought in the past, part of the strength of them was that your opponents don't, their game
They
plan is
would know your
completely
game
out the
plan.
window, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like I've talked about getting rocked by Dave Grant with his crazy like toss palp out in front of the occupier tank. I'm sure you were a fan of that list when that
I
came
loved
out.
it. I
Yeah,
loved
and
every
so
bit
like
of it.
I was on the receiving end of all of the badness, and I think that like maybe I'm not sure if Kyle would have beaten him if I like wasn't there to like warn him about it the day before, uh, but like that was a list to where I saw the units and like they didn't make sense to me, and I was too rigid in my thinking because if we did just sort of like line up against each other and fight, then like I was playing Blizzard Force when it was at its most broken. It's like I would have won that fight if we just like shot at each other like morons. But of course, like I was the only moron of the two of us, and so what happened is that like I didn't know his game plan, and by the time I realized what it was, is that I was already dead. So yeah, like I guess maybe what you're saying is that you can't have jank if we don't know what the standard is. And
Yeah.
so either everything is jank or maybe nothing is.
Right. And I think that, yeah, I would agree. We're in a place that we're not really sure what jank is. For me, what 2.6 has been, I have loved the challenge of learning how to split your army effectively and learning how to overwhelm your opponent's split. that has been so fun for my brain.
Mm.
And because so I love objectives like the shifting priorities or the intercept one where you pretty much have to split, or breakthrough. Not so much the what is the one where you destroy enemy base or whatever, like that one, those are all close enough together.
Destroy enemy base, close the pocket.
Yeah.
Well, destroy enemy base is secondary.
No, sorry. What's the one where
the bunker assault?
Bunker assault.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah,
so the bunker assault, the bunkers are close enough together. You don't really have to split, and so there's less decision making there in terms of splitting, right? And so the splitting objectives have been very, very enjoyable for me, and as a result, like you can design your list in your army to have very unique units on different sides, and and learning what those units are good against and what they're not good against, and how to split them, and seeing your opponent across the board and be like, okay, so he's put this down here, he's probably going to need this other unit to support that, and then this other unit, so I'm going to do these things. Like that has been, I've really enjoyed that aspect of the game, and I think because of that, and because there's less fire coming in on certain places, you can really you can have quite a wide variety of units, and do well. And so I haven't really felt like there has, I mean, obviously we've seen that there's units that are been very, very consistently good, but I think that there's a ton. I think there's a ton of units out there that are not played as often, that still have that. I mean, with the right split, you can make a lot of use out of them when they should be considered bad.
I definitely think the floor is a lot higher on units that were bad before. What were you gonna say, Evan?
No, I was just gonna say that I think learning how to split appropriately is something that everybody's sort of been learning at the same time, and some have been learning it more quickly than others. I think that like early on is that I would notice that it would happen more often to where there were games where I think when 2.6 was still fresh, that I found myself sort of sometimes taking advantage of the fact that the opponent was like less sure about how to split up their army. And lately, in the past couple of tournaments I've gone to, is that I don't think I've run into anybody who has sort of like made that same sort of legacy thinking errors. And I made those errors early on too, and maybe I can still make them, but I do think that the player base is evolving now that the game has been the way that it is for over half a year, and that is pretty exciting stuff. And so my fingers are crossed that when the updates come out in just a couple months, I'm sure that we'll see most, if not all of them, by the time Adepticon rolls around, at least be previewed anyway. Is that I am hopeful that will, given that I'm sure there'll be points adjustments too, is that'll lift some units that need lifting into more of a zone of viability. And then if you're talking about, like, they've already brought up Jin, Lando, and Callus, which are 3 units that you really rarely see being played these days, for the most part. I think Lando and Callus are okay. Jin is the one with the major problems. But when if they're going to be switching those up in the way that they switched up Anakin, then the environment is going to look really different, because there's still a whole bunch of other units that they could be adjusting to. So my fingers are crossed. And given
me too. I hope Palpatine gets that treatment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It has been funny ever since Yoda came out to like compare the 3 pips.
Yeah.
To where it's like, I do that and also these other things. It's a little bit messed up. It's like I ordered all units, and here's 6 tokens, and I can show them range 3.
Turns out Palpatine had a right to be mad.
So angry. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you know, I wrote that article. I wrote that article like a month and a half ago that got people talking, which is the point of stuff like that. But I think that by the time we hit May, that'll be time to sort of like do a zoom back out and kind of see where it looks like things are once the game has had a chance to mature. So my hopes are definitely still high. Speaking of Adepticon, I was wondering maybe we can take like a brief amount of time to sort of talk about like what do we think is going to be hashtag the meta, even though Brian Baird cares little, so little. He can't even see the word meta is how little he cares about the word meta. He's a meta blindness, which has only worked to your advantage. But what do we think are going to be the big scary lists right now? The small caveat is that I think that there's one wild card here, which is that per AMG, ARF troopers, even though we have no idea what is going on with them, are supposed to release sometime in February is what I had seen before. So that could throw a wrench at least into that faction. But for everybody else, you know, we got Aquas, we got Crabs coming out. Rebels just got their new toys. Empire still has their old toys. The new ones maybe to me don't look that great. Feel free if you want to defend the Riot Squad while we're talking about this, then go ahead and jump in, Brian.
Some things aren't really defensible, but I am curious though. I'm not willing to spend the money, but I am curious if actually if it's compounding. If compounding them can be actually problematic if you have actually like 6 squads of them, and just like if that can be problematic. I don't. Mike's making that. He's like, no. This is how I hope you're. This is how my brain works, right?
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. It's just like sometimes you can hit a critical mass of like a saturation of units like that, and it can be problematic. I think if they were actually better at their job it killing things in melee, I think that would be more of a tenable conversation.
Do you think that's their job though?
I don't know what their job is if that's not their job, because they're priced like an expensive melee unit.
They're a riot squad, so they're supposed to hold lines.
Sure, I narratively, yeah, I guess they're supposed to just sit there and stay alive, but they're really. I think
you just run them in and you just soak up points on objectives, man.
You think you just try and stay alive on points of interest? Yeah, maybe.
I see their job as being like not that different than fleet troopers. It's just that fleet troopers can make a pretty good attack on the way in, and Riot Squad can't.
Well, fleet troopers melt in melee though. Whereas the Riot Troopers, as long as they're not fighting a lightsaber, will probably not die to a single swing.
Yeah, so it's just like it's an extension of what Fleet Troopers certainly can do, which is to charge into a point and at least do some damage on the way in. They ain't going to be able to take it on the way back. But you know, you trade the ability to make those range 2 shots on the way in. Obviously, the Riot Squad's very bad at doing that. But like they're much more survivable once they actually get in there. And so I can see like the concept of them. I think that they're probably just like, I don't know, 5 points too expensive or something like that. And that if they could just like shave a little bit off, which I was really, again, hoping that they would have done that in the November update, to just like right after they release the unit, just admit that it was too expensive. But like they totally have a future. It's just that their points cost is wrong, is the way that I see it.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, this is how my brain works, and it's all theory crafting now, right? I haven't tried them out. But I can say that I've played a lot of fleets, and I played a lot of naked fleets, and And I've played against a lot of clones and a lot of 501st and a lot of Anakins. And it is always surprising to me how long a fleet squad lasts in melee. Like they shouldn't last long after, they shouldn't last more than one punch, but they just always seem to be around. And so when I have that kind of in mind, I'm like, maybe there's something there. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, for the one person out there who was inspired by Brian to like get on Asmodee's site and try to single-handedly send them towards the in memoriam segment on our next podcast.
I promise I was not paid by AMZ. Brian, go sell our product.
Now we know why you agreed to come on. And okay, so aside from the obvious riot troopers example in terms of the meta, is that like what else, like what do you think is going to be the big scary thing? I know my answer, but I'm curious what you got. I think
Aquas are going to be that. Like I just look at that unit and I'm like, like it's like a hungry man looking at a chicken sandwich, just like, oh yeah, there's a lot I can do with this.
Off the grid for like the last 2 to 3 weeks, and I've been able to pretend like Aquas didn't exist for that duration. This is the first time I've thought about them in almost a month, Brian. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Brian, do you remember how earlier in the podcast, I know this is a long time ago, but how we talked about how Tauntauns were 100 points. 100 points for a unit that if you shoot them before they move, is that they will die exactly as fast as them fleet troopers that we were just talking about. And Aqua Droids are a lot less than 100 points. They're 65, right?
Yeah.
With 9 health and armor 2. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Same save.
Boy.
Yeah.
Man. And it's just like, and their vehicle, which has all sorts of advantages. Again, there's
also disadvantages.
Yeah,
they can't get the new amazing cover, Evan.
They don't need it. They have armor 2.
they literally have it built in.
They have the old better version of cover built on their chassis. So what do they need new cover for? But those Tauntauns, if they get hit by one mortar, they may only get to make one move after that. But that one mortar is maybe gonna do one wound to these things, and they ain't gonna care. They're just gonna keep marching, and then even though they're not gonna like put out a ton of damage themselves, is that another part of the problem is that there's this gentleman behind them who I don't know who gave Count Dooku his title anyway, like, right? Because a count implies some kind of like a vassal structure. This is probably better for an article. I'm sorry for getting us off track, but like that guy is behind them, and you can't shoot him. Like when I did the Rapid Reactions article to Aqua Droids, is that like I put it all out on TTS to like show how well a 1 mini unit can hide. It's really well.
Yes,
it gives you really, really, it gives you protection from the vast majority of the entire play space, including like a lot of vertical protection for all those who are saying that, well, you can just jump up in the height 1 and you can shoot them. You probably can't because they're very tall. So yeah,
and force push is a super rarity right now too.
It is. Yeah.
It is.
That's like the only way you could get him out.
But guess who will have force push? Count Dooku, and you aren't going to be able to stop him from doing like whatever he wants. And to be fair, is that I think that many of us have misjudged the power of a unit before it comes out. Inquisitors was one where I at first was like, well, Jedi are just history. Those Inquisitors are just gonna go in there and be shutting them down all the time. Boy, I was wrong about that. And so
Turns
maybe
out
we'll
the
be
units
wrong.
were just bad. Like if those units were good, that would have happened.
I mean, yeah, you're right.
It did irritate me. I'm a Op Luke's like my jam, right? He's like my favorite. And
Yeah.
so I try to play Op Luke as often as I can. And boy, that irritated the heck out of me every time. Like, oh cool, my 240 point unit can't do
push, huh?
what I spent 240 points on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a good thing they're bad because I did not like that. I was not a fan of that upgrade.
No, I think pretty much every Empire player was not.
Speaking of units you play a lot, I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
You're not only an Op Luke enjoyer, but I hear you are an R2-D2 enjoyer. How are you feeling about the little trash can these days?
Yeah.
Are we going to see him at Worlds?
No.
Yeah. What's the over-under on R2s at Worlds?
0. Maybe 1.
Yeah,
R2's in a, I mean, if you want to take him to heal up his sole use is to heal a damaged
he is repair
vehicle now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was hoping you had something for me there, Brian.
I'm sorry, man.
He can't go on the bus anymore, man.
Yeah.
That was part of the magic.
Yeah, it was a big part of the magic.
Yeah, it's like this guy who is sometimes hard to shoot is now like usually impossible to shoot, and then if you ever get him out, then he'll be so hard to shoot that you can't kill him. That was good, it turns out. But yeah, secret mission in general, like bounty is fine right now because at the end of the day, it's like you're still killing somebody, and if you it feels like you're kind of accidentally getting a VP, and in the one game out of 20, I don't know, that's a wild guess. In the one game out of 20 to where the ending score would have been a tie, but that you won because of the 1 point that you got from bounty. Like that'll sometimes happen and it'll be sweet, but then like it's really hard to imagine that happening with secret mission because when you're doing secret mission is that you're like taking a unit and devoting it to like doing the thing that doesn't normally help you win, which is that they're trying to dive into an opponent's zone, which means they're not on a POI and that they're not fighting people. And that just seems like a losing game. So I don't know. I feel like they're going to have to just change secret mission if they want it to be a thing again.
And I could tell you that if R2 decides to use both heals on most objectives or on most of the deployments, and if you don't have his 1 pip, which to be honest, if you're running R2 with other stuff, you want the other.
There's no time for it anymore.
But you if you heal twice with R2, you actually can't get to their deployment on turn 4.
Yeah, no, no. It's tough. That's why I was asking. I was hoping that maybe you would solve the riddle. I've tried a few times.
We tried.
But yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm good. It's good to know we came to the same conclusion.
But to be honest, so I used them in Invader League in my pod, and I went undefeated in my pod and changed my Invader League up and decided to just die in elims because Rebel Mandos needs help. I tried to help him the best I could, guys. But yeah, so I think if you use him as a repair battery, he's still worth 55 points for sure. But
to recap is that I think we did a really good job focusing on the meta we expect at Worlds. So we got Aqua Droids and Dooku, and then you've got R2-D2. You've got riot control squads. We've got Inquisitors. What's going to be good for a public?
I'm surprised. I don't know about you guys. I have been surprised at the fall off from Anakin. I think Anakin's still so good, and in our local area, I have not seen a lot of Anakin lately since the changes, and I'm not sure why, because Anakin's a baller still.
I mean, he didn't really get any worse. Like,
And Anakin the best. He's still the best. Maybe Dooku is like tied with him now, but
I do think that a lot of
he's good.
Republic players are like stuck in this like I gotta play commandos like mindset. I don't know if that's like the list you're still seeing, but
We're
they're
not
like,
we're not seeing commandos at all.
oh, okay. What about arcs?
Yeah, a lot of arcs still.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that the list should be changing off of commandos and probably, I don't know. I think arcs with captains are still pretty good. Um, but I don't think that you have to lose Anakin in that situation. Anakin's just a hammer of he could have went up 40 points and I think
Yeah,
would still be very playable.
totally agree.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think at first I was like I played Commandos a couple times after the points change, and you know they still felt really good. But then I think that again, you know, players have adapted, meta's diversified a little bit. Is that you know they're still viable, but the faction definitely shouldn't be addicted to them the way that they were in the past. And I think that taking their place, it may be a lot of ATRTs, or
I think we'll see a decent amount of ATRTs.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I personally like the flamethrower ATRTs. I think they're more fun than the
We
laser ones.
know.
For Gar, I agree with you. I mean, not just because they're more fun, but like when I think of the value gained for the laser cannon over the native rocket launcher that they have anyway,
Yeah.
is that it doesn't feel like it's really worth, you know, giving them the laser cannon at all in that sort of a situation. Whereas if you give them the flamethrowers, that then they can be sort of dual role, is that they have like a decent enough range 3 weapon,
Yeah.
but they have a really awesome range 1 weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think
Melee to
ATRTs.
range 1.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That was another change. You know, maybe we will see a return of uh, the non Wookiee defenders fluttercraft. Speaking to a small crowd, is maybe that's more than one person. It's like 6 at least. But those people are out there. All of my friends, my fluttercraft friends. And you know, this question is coming out of nowhere, Brian. But what about Yoda? You think we'll see a lot of Yoda at Adepticon? No, really. That's interesting.
I so
Tell me more.
I'm sad because Yoda had like 8,000 ways to play him before, and I feel like there's like one way to play him now.
And it's not even that very good.
It's such a relief to hear you say that, Brian.
I think it's decent. I think it is. I mean,
I'm interested to hear what way you think that is, because I'm not really seeing the forest through the trees on this one.
Yoda with battle med and 2 6-man arcs is pretty brutal round 1. Because you play Yoda's 2-pip and you give it to both your arcs, and your arcs scout and they get aims, and then they move speed 2 and they get aims, and then they move speed 2 and they get aims, and then they shoot at range 2 with a boatload of dice with what is this? Like I have targeting scopes on them, so I reroll 6 dice and then I pierce it and they just delete 2 units.
Sure.
That's really good. And when you follow that up with a Yoda 3-pip, pretty decent. Yoda's got burst and push. So I mean, I mean that's
you can play around that though, is the main issue I have with that strategy. Is like if you play the 2-pip on turn 1, they just don't move closer than 6 inches off their board edge and they're completely safe.
Yes, which means that you have to double move round 2.
100%. I'm not saying it doesn't put them at a disadvantage, but it does. That's a lot of eggs in that basket, and now Yoda's like
I also
in your backfield. You know,
I did play it against one of my buddies on the north side, Trent. Trent got 6th at Worlds. He's really very, very good CIS player, yeah. And he did that. And I was like, oh dang. And so then I went back and I put recon intel on this arcs just to get that extra measure.
Wow.
I mean, it does change the calculus pretty considerably.
It does a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but so yeah, there are ways to work around it, but it does put you in a little bit of a hole. And then you have to, if you do that, then you have to deal with Yoda on a point on round 2, because you weren't able to shoot him enough to get there.
Sure.
And that's problematic in and of itself. Battle Yoda can be decent, if he's able to stay alive.
I think that you're totally right, is that the 2-pip can still be pretty brutal and Battle Yoda can get some stuff done. So like if we take aside sort of like the general sadness that I think we all have about the fact that Yoda used to be a like very much a clever person's like toolbox of a unit, and that he is much less of that now. And like even if you take that away and you just focus on to what extent do his command cards like help the other people on your squad, on top of like how dangerous is he on his own, and like that's the part where it falls apart to me, is that I compare him to Anakin and I'm like, it just ain't worth it to have a unit that like it can go ahead and do stuff, but it can be, if your opponent sort of knows how Yoda works, is that they can predict like what command card you're going to play next usually, or at least often. Yeah, not if they're playing you, Brian. You're going to have no idea, as you admitted earlier. But like, obviously Yoda helps the rest of the team more than Anakin does, but Anakin is just like, he's such a monster when it comes to the fighting. Is that, and like, when he always has deflect turned on, is that from a spending points perspective, it's just really hard for me to see the squad that truly benefits more from having Yoda in it than Anakin in it. And that's kind of where I land and what makes me sad about where he is right now.
Yeah. So I also like, I'm pretty hot on people are gonna laugh at me. I'm pretty hot at sonic imploder grenades. I really like putting sonic imploders on naked.
I gotta look this up. One second.
No, I told you about this, Mike.
Did you?
Yeah.
You just didn't listen to me, but
probably
like I am with you in certain lists, because go ahead.
Suppressive.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So you throw those on some naked clones, and you got Yoda, who can be a suppressing machine, which is kind of a big deal with the POIs. And I mean, Anakin can kill stuff way better than Yoda. But if those dice just don't do what you need them to do, so you can win games without rolling those dice with suppression. So.
Sure. I think that's kind of my I think my biggest complaint about new Yoda is that he's got to play his 3-pip. And I think new Yoda needs that card to say Yoda can attack that turn in order for Yoda to be what he needs to be. I think, personally. I think all of his tricks are gone, which is why that card says Yoda cannot attack this turn. And like all the things that, I don't know. And the fact that somewhere between 1 and 2 turns of your Yoda play, your piece that now has to like kill things to be effective literally can't kill things, because there's no killing on the table for him. I do think is a pretty big issue with his kit.
I agree. I think that's a great insight that I would love to see changed as well, because that would vault him to be playable in a few other circumstances than just the minimal ones that I can see. And so I very much agree with that, Mike.
Yeah, that's kind of my hope, is that maybe they edit that card. Because you know, you can't, when you're playing Yoda, you're gonna play that card one of the first three turns, no matter what. Which means you're losing eight attack dice now. Before, you were mitigating that through like guidance, standby, blah blah blah
Right.
blah blah blah. And it's just not a thing anymore. So yeah.
I will settle for hashtag let him start in Chewie's backpack. Because then, you know, if Chewie has recon intel, then like if you're talking about a situation where like Yoda can start at a speed 1 followed by speed 2 moves closer to the POI, and then, you know, he can like do his 2 or his 1 pip and start hacking, like then I would be singing a different tune in terms of like what Yoda can do. But right now he's still ambling out there like the sweet little old man that he is. And I did like, I still enjoyed playing Yoda Wookiees before the change, but even then, is that his slowness in terms of getting out there on turn 1 was just like a real big limiter to me. But maybe they'll adjust him. I feel like this has been a thing that the community, like, I don't know, the whole relentless charge steady thing has been the first time to where I barely ever hear dissent in the community in terms of people not liking the change that was made. There's usually like a lot of like people for and people against with like pretty much every other change that's been made in the game. This is the first one to where it seems it was sort of like the anti-people's choice. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be adjusted at some point.
I think when you have units that are as expensive as Yoda or
Yeah.
as well loved as Yoda, right? You want to give them as many options as possible,
Yeah.
because then the ceiling for gameplay is high, and I feel like when you're consistently taking those options away of these like really high expensive units, it waters things down a lot.
Yeah.
And as much as I love how personally how the game is played now, I really want to see those units have more options available to them, not less.
Yep. Totally on the same page there. So, any other, like, maybe we can have that be sort of our last, like, it's very rebel of you to sort of end with a message of hope, and that we're not all flying high. You know, this is why we invited you on the podcast, is to inject a little bit of hope back into the Notorious Scoundrels. So we appreciate you being here. Any other thoughts from either of you before we sign off and let people scramble to the Asmodee store to buy the Riot Troopers before they go away forever?
Brian, I would like to know what you think the best Rebel unit is right now. And does it have the clone trooper type?
So I'll be honest, I've never played Bad Batch and Rebels.
Wow. Okay.
That is so Brian of you.
That is, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's so Brian.
Yeah. So I think Rebel Bad Batch is fantastic. I've played against it several times, and it's very, very, very good. Man, what is the best Rebel unit? I've got so many opinions here. Like, I wouldn't.
You're only allowed to have one opinion.
Okay.
Because we make the rules.
Anytime you ask Brian Bear this question, you're just going to get Luke, because I think Luke's just the best at everything.
Solid.
He does everything I need him to do in every single game, and yeah, and he almost never dies anymore. So
like 5 rounds doesn't feel like enough. I mean, Luke and Vader, probably both kinds of Vader. It's just like there just ain't enough time.
Yeah.
But especially, unlike those other two, is that Luke can like really get in there. And then like while he's there, not only is he hard to kill, and he's chopping people. But he also has serve and mind trick, and as far as I know, is that he's the only person out there who can take. I think it's that he can take 4 units off of a POI in one activation by killing one, mind tricking another one into panic, serving another one to get out of there, and then force pushing the last one to get out of there. And so when you think of a unit that has that much of a tool belt, like, yeah, it's kind of hard to argue with him being the best.
Oh, so that discussion was on Discord recently, and someone did correct. It could be 5.
What else? What did we miss?
So the unit that you serve can start a melee.
Oh, yeah, good call.
And so whoever, I don't remember who it was. I wish I could name drop him, because I don't remember who it was, but it was someone who said that, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're absolutely right. Because you can mind trick one, move it off, and then. But I mean, obviously, this is all like the scenario's never gonna happen. But the fact that that's a potential is pretty amazing.
Commander Luke can do most of that too.
I mean, he can. Yeah. It's true. He just has to work a lot harder.
He can't actually do it because he doesn't have disengage. But
I know. This is a bait. Come on. Reel it in.
No. Commander Luke sucks, okay?
Yeah, if you take nothing else away from the podcast, for any of you out there who are worried about the haters on Notorious Scoundrels, just remember that the last message was Brian Bear coming on and saying, Commander Luke sucks.
No,
Brian Bear out.
Brian Bear out.
Later.
Oh, that's so funny.
Well, thanks so much for having us on. I know you are sometimes on the Indie Garrison podcast, so if you want to hear what those folks are up to, you'll hear a variety of opinions about like various units out there, including many of the ones that we in the Notorious Scoundrels dare to call D tier. If you want to get some other opinions, then check it into Garrison, and I'm sure that you will see Brian towards the top tables at Adepticon with 6 riot troopers. You heard it here first, and we are looking forward to the madness.
Yeah, it's I'm excited. I do need to try it out. See how bad it is.
All right, Mike. Well, I don't know how to stop the podcast.
It's okay. I was just going to ask, are we landing this plane? Or
let's do it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. This has been the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Evan.
I'm Brian.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.